Chapter 10, Mishnah 7. This Mishnah discusses cases where a dead sheretz is found in wine or oil. Regarding someone who dispenses wine or oil from a pit into several barrels by lowering the barrels into the pit one after the other, if after several barrels were filled, a dead sheretz was found in the barrel that was filled first, the contents of all the barrels are tameh. Since the sheretz certainly touched the wine or oil in the pit, either the sheretz was originally in the pit and was drawn into the first barrel when it was filled, or the sheretz was in the barrel before it was lowered into the pit, in which case the sheretz touched the wine or oil in the pit when the barrel was lowered in. Either way, the sheretz touched all the wine or oil in the pit and made it tameh. However, if the dead sheretz was found in the last barrel to be filled from the pit, the contents of that barrel are tameh, but the contents of all the other barrels are tahor. In this case, we can assume that the sheretz was never in the pit. Rather, it was in this barrel before the barrel was filled. Therefore, the wine or oil in this barrel is tameh because it touched the sheretz, but the contents of the other barrels are tahor, because by the time this barrel with its sheretz was lowered into the pit, the contents of the other barrels had already been removed from the pit. The Mishnah's first ruling does not apply in every case, though. When do we say that if a sheretz is found in the first barrel, the barrels are all tameh? When he dispenses the contents of the pit into each one of the barrels directly, by lowering the barrels into a pit. Therefore, the sheretz in the first barrel surely came into contact with the contents of the pit, as explained above. But if he dispenses the wine or oil into the barrels with a ladle, and a sheretz was found in one of the barrels, that barrel alone is tameh, but the rest of the barrels are tahor. In this case, we can assume that the sheretz had always been in the barrel in which it was found, and since the barrel containing the sheretz was never lowered into the pit, the sheretz inside it never touched the contents of the pit, and so did not make them tameh. This last ruling does not apply in every case. When do we say that only the barrel in which the sheretz was found is tameh? When the person checked the barrels before he put the wine or oil in them, to make sure they contained no shiratzim. But he did not cover each barrel while he was filling the other ones, and thus the sheretz could have fallen in after his inspection. Or he covered the barrels while he was transferring the wine or oil, but he did not check the barrels before he began. In either of these cases, we could assume that the sheretz did not come from the pit, but had fallen into the barrel in which it was found, either before or after the barrel was filled. However, if he checked the barrels and the ladle before he began, to make sure that they contained no shiratzim, and he covered the barrels and the pit while he was ladling the wine, the law is as follows. If a sheretz was found in a barrel, the contents of all the barrels are tameh, since the sheretz must have been in the pit before the person started transferring the wine or oil, and thus the sheretz made the contents of the pit tameh. Likewise, if the sheretz was found in the pit, the contents of all the barrels are tameh, for the sheretz certainly touched it all. And if the sheretz was found in the ladle, the contents of all the barrels are tameh. Since the ladle was clean from shiratzim before he began, the sheretz must have been in the pit and come into the ladle when he dipped the ladle in the pit. Thus, the sheretz made all the pit's contents tameh.